Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Prophets Joshua chapter 21 in a clear and simple way, step by step. So we're looking at this absolutely fascinating geographical and historical puzzle that honestly serves at the grand climax to the first half of the book of Joshua. Up to this point, the Israelites have crossed the Jordan, they've fought these grueling battles, and they've divided up the land among the tribes. But there's one massive piece of unfinished business, and it centers entirely on the tribe of Levi.
Okay, let's just dive right in by asking the core question that really drives this entire chapter. How exactly does the tribe of Levi survive when God explicitly said they wouldn't get a standard bordered land inheritance like all the other tribes? Think about it for a second. Judah got this massive southern territory, Ephraim got the center, but Levi, they were the priests, right? The caretakers of the tabernacle. They were told the Lord is their inheritance. But practically speaking, in a purely agricultural society, you still need a physical place to sleep, and you absolutely still need fields for your livestock. So how in the world is this resolved?
To answer that, we're going to walk through the chapter methodically. First, the Levites claim their promise. Second, dividing by 3 families. Third, the priestly allotment for Aaron. Fourth, distributing the 48 cities. Fifth, the cities of refuge. And finally, number 6, not one promise failed. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The Levites claim their promise. So we start right in the opening verses of Joshua 21, specifically verses 1 through 3. The major land distribution is finally over, but like we said, the Levites still need a place to actually live. The chapter kicks off very logically. The family heads of the Levites step up. They approach Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the other tribes at the city of Shiloh. Now, Shiloh is where the tabernacle is currently set up. And what's really interesting here is that the Levites don't beg, they simply state a legal fact. They formally request the towns and the open pasture lands that God commanded through Moses way back in the book of Numbers, specifically in chapter 35. They're basically asking that the other tribes, who just got their massive tracts of land, carve out specific towns and hand them over to the Levites. And this brilliantly illustrates a really major theme in this chapter, the fulfillment of the law through obedience. Verse 3 tells us that the Israelites obediently responded to this claim. No fights, no arguing over property values or prime real estate. The children of Israel just willingly gave the Levites these cities and pasture lands out of their own newly acquired inheritance, exactly as the Lord commanded. Moving on to section 2, dividing by 3 families. Now, to understand exactly how these cities were given out in verses 4 through 8, we first have to understand who the Levites actually are. It is incredibly easy to get lost in all the ancient names in this chapter if you don't keep a simple mental map handy. The tribe of Levi is basically divided into 3 main ancestral clans, based on the 3 sons of Levi, Kohath, Gershon, and Merari. But there's a special subdivision within the Kohathites. The descendants of Aaron the priest are Kohathites, but they hold the unique office of the priesthood. So when the lots are finally drawn to distribute the cities, they're actually divided into 4 distinct groups: Aaron's priestly line, the rest of the Kohathites, the Gershonites, and the Merarites. Now, what is really fascinating about this distribution is the sheer mathematical balance of it all. 48 cities in total are meticulously divided by lot among these groups. Aaron's descendants get 13 cities, the rest of the Kohathites get 10, the Gershonites get 13, and the Merarites get 12. And guys, this isn't just random trivia. By scattering these 48 cities across the map, God ensures that the Levites, the teachers of the law and the spiritual caretakers of the nation, are distributed evenly throughout all of Israel. It literally guarantees that no tribe is left without spiritual guidance. Section 3. The priestly allotment for Aaron. Let's take a closer look at the very first lot drawn in verses 9 through 19, which naturally goes to the most spiritually significant group, the priests. The text tells us that the first lot fell to the descendants of Aaron. They received 13 cities specifically from the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. And if you know your biblical geography, this is just incredibly profound. These 3 tribes are located right in the southern and central part of the land, perfectly situated around the area that will eventually become the religious and political center of the whole nation, Jerusalem. Long before the temple was even built there, God's providence placed the priestly families in the exact geographic proximity they would eventually need to serve in the temple. It's honestly a perfect setup. And included in this list is the famous city of Hebron, which we are definitely going to touch on again shortly. All right, section 4, distributing the 48 cities.
After the priests, verses 20 through 40 take us step by step through the rest of the families, the remaining Kohathites, the Gershonites, and the Merarites.
Here we can compare the next two allotments side by side. The remaining Kohathites, who weren't priests but were responsible for handling the sacred holy items of the tabernacle, were given 10 cities situated right in the central region of Israel, from the tribes of Ephraim, Dan, and the western half of Manasseh. Next up, the Gershonites. Historically, their job was to carry the curtains and coverings of the tabernacle. They received 13 cities dispersed heavily throughout the northern territories. That's Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the eastern half of Manasseh over in Bashan. Finally, we look at verses 34 to 40. The Merarites, whose historical job was to carry the heavy structural frames and pillars of the tabernacle, received their 12 cities from Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. Now, take a step back and notice what has just happened here. When you tally it all up, every single one of the 12 tribes of Israel has contributed land to support the Levites. The burden, and frankly, the blessing, of housing the spiritual leaders is shared by the entire community.
But we really need to clarify what they actually received, as stated in verses 41 and 42, because they didn't just get the walled towns themselves. The Hebrew text is very, very specific here. They received the cities with the open land about them. As we know from the foundational laws back in Numbers 35, this open land or pasture land extended outward 1,500 feet from the city walls. The Levites were given this specific green belt so they could graze their cattle, keep their flocks, and maintain their substance. I mean, they were entirely dedicated to God's service, yes, but they still had to eat and tend to their herds, right? Which brings us to Section 5, the cities of refuge. Now, as we read through this incredibly long list of 48 towns in chapter 21, there is a crucial subcategory repeatedly mentioned that serves a very specific, real-world, legal, and merciful function. 6 of these 48 Levite cities are explicitly designated as cities of refuge. And the crucial point here is that the Levites weren't just religious figures offering sacrifices at an altar. They were literally the guardians of justice and mercy in the land. Think about it. If someone accidentally caused a death, we're talking unintentional manslaughter here, not intentional murder, they could flee to one of these specific Levite safe haven cities. Once inside, they would be completely protected from the avenger of blood. The avenger was usually a close relative of the deceased seeking immediate revenge. The accused would stay safe in the city until a fair, measured trial could be held before the congregation.
The text highlights these exact cities specifically as the lots are drawn: Hebron in the south, Shechem in the center, and Kedesh in the north. And then across the Jordan River on the east side, Bezer, Ramoth, and Golan. Notice the deliberate geography here. These 6 cities were intentionally spread out, 3 on the east of the Jordan and 3 on the west, spanning all the way from north to south. This practically ensured that no matter where you lived or where a tragic accident happened in Israel, a city of refuge was always accessible to you. Mercy was quite literally always within reach.
And now for Section 6, not one promise failed. Let's move to the real climax of the chapter, verses 43 to 45. These 3 verses serve as a grand, sweeping summary, not just for this specific chapter, and not just for the whole land distribution process, but really for the entire book of Joshua up to this point. Read verse 43 carefully. After chapters and chapters of grueling battles, massive lists of defeated kings, and these complex verse-by-verse boundary lines, we finally arrive at this profound statement of resolution. The ancient promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob centuries earlier in the book of Genesis is finally a physical reality. They possess the land, they are settled in it, the generations of waiting are truly over. And this brings us right to verse 44, the ultimate result of their entire journey: total rest and complete security on every single side. The text makes it a huge point to say that the Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. They aren't just residing in the land, they are completely safe in the land, delivered exactly as sworn. Which leads us to verse 45. Now, this is the absolute pinnacle takeaway of our entire explainer today. The text says, "There failed not aught of any good thing which the Lord had spoken unto the house of Israel. All came to pass." Despite hundreds of years of waiting, despite decades of wandering in the desert, despite all the rebellion, and despite the endless warfare, the source text definitively declares that God's faithfulness is absolute. It is mathematically and geographically perfect. He said he would do it, and he did it. No exceptions. So,
Why does this exhaustive, highly detailed list of ancient cities actually matter to us today? Well, because it shows us that a society functions best when it deeply cares for its spiritual caretakers, integrating them completely into the fabric of the community. The Levites weren't just isolated in one massive holy compound somewhere. They were purposefully integrated into every single tribe to teach, to guide, and to provide accessible mercy through the cities of refuge. Let's look at some deeply practical lessons we can pull from this. First, fulfillment takes time, but it absolutely does arrive. Second, by sharing our inheritance and our resources, we uplift the entire community. Third, making justice and mercy accessible, just like those cities of refuge, is a clear divine priority. And ultimately, we see that we can trust the process, aligning ourselves with a structure of absolute, proven faithfulness. So consider this. If ancient Israel found that not a single promise of God failed over hundreds of years, what promises are you patiently trusting to be fulfilled in your own life today? Maybe the intricate details of your own life, the delays, the battles, the boundaries, are actually building towards a perfectly fulfilled promise right now. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.